The goal of reading is really always twofold. One, to help our students fall in love with reading, and two, to help them make meaning from their reading. And historically, teachers fall on comprehension pages and worksheets. That's probably how you and I were taught. Answer these questions, do this worksheet to go with the book to show that we understand. And I don't feel that that's very authentic. Who of us reads a book and then answers comprehension questions about it? But there are skills that we can teach our students to use to help them make meaning as they go for their lifelong. And so I'm going to be showing you 2 activities that you can do with your students that are not worksheets that I hope that you will enjoy. The first one is a newspaper activity, and being the newspaper nerd that I am, I fell in love with this when my daughter Annie came home with this for a high school reading response. She let me help her with it, which was so much fun. We used she chose a 12 by 18 sheet of paper, and the book she chose to use was The Face on the Milk Carton. And if you know that book, you will see the phrases that Annie chose. Missing child sacrifice. I won't let fear stop me. Dark secrets, messy situations. And her entire board is filled up with equally provocative and just very authentic phrases and thoughts that come from that book. So I wanted to try that with my students. And I will tell you, it was a messy activity. But, you know, in life, sometimes the best activities are messy. We know this to be true. So, I first chose Mr. Popper's Penguins to do with one of my groups. And I'd like to share with you some of the phrases that they chose. Crisis case, bills, global dream, moves, emergency, payments, hit hard, penguins, dad. I'll show you one more. Chaos, bills, winter storms, penguins. Someone spelled out Mr. Popper from cutting out letters, house, machines. They had so much fun with this activity. So I wanted, and having them explain to me why they chose the different terms just helped me to understand their comprehension of the book without having to answer comprehension questions. So I wanted to try it with my Mrs. Frisby group. Now, Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH is a book that I first became aware of in 1985 at La Sierra University in my children's literature course. And I have to tell you about one of the students in my class. He was not an education major. He was a biomathematics major who thought that it would be a good use of his time to take this course as an elective. We now know and love him as Wonderful Stanley, but how fun it was that we started getting to work together from back then, and we've just never stopped. But here it is. Maybe you know this book. Once I read it this Christmas, it was an I can't put it down book, and as you can see, it's a Newbery Medal winner, 1972. And as soon as I was done, I went to Wikipedia to try to find Robert C. O'Brien, only to find that he had died the year later in 1973. So sad. They've just made a 50-year edition with leather binding, which is lovely. It helps, to buy a nice book like this. They last a lot longer than the paperbacks. Of course, they're a little more pricey, but this is what I'm buying for my class right now, is more of this copy of it. But I wanted to do the newspaper activity with them. And look what they came up with. Plant the seeds for a fruitful new year. Health, cat, the dragon, enemy, cat, pet, bull. Fragile medically, a father's death, a son's despair. Jordan chose to use pictures of furniture because the Rats of NIMH create a community, a very human-like community. And Fiona even found, I'm not even kidding, that one of the main characters is named Timothy. She found the tiniest little Timothy in her newspaper. So if you don't have newspapers and you live in the Inland Empire, just contact me. I'm happy to help you. It was a very meaningful activity, and I'm anxious to do it with my other groups as well. Well, they wanted to continue with this book series, and would you believe Robert C. O'Brien's daughter wrote a sequel in 1986. So they begged me to buy the sequel for them, which I did. And I want to share with you the activity I did for this. It is taken from this book, You Gotta Be the Book, by Jeffrey D. Wilhelm. And this book is full of authentic activities that are spot on for making meaning and helping students fall in love with it. But this activity is called the gap scene activity. And, you know, authors do this all the time. They're talking about an area, and then suddenly they leave that area and go on to another one, and there's a big gap that is left. So I took my students to a gap area in here, and I said, and then what happens? They go, well, we don't know. I said, yeah, we don't know. We're on to something else. What your job is going to be is to fill in that gap. You're going to write a gap scene. And the first week I did it, I had them do two gaps for the entire book. But they worked so hard on the gap scenes that now I know I need to just have them do one. I told them they could write it out in an essay form, they could do it pictorially, whatever they wanted. And they all chose to do it in a cartoon with great dialogue. And they worked so hard on these gap scenes. And Jordan, the one who wrote this one, her response was, Mrs. Matsuda, I didn't know where to end. You know, my gap scene led to another scene, which led to another scene. I said, you were essentially writing your own book. And she laughed. She said, yes, I didn't know when to stop. What a beautiful, when does that ever happen with comprehension? I just didn't know how to stop answering this comprehension. It meant so much to me. I just kept going and going and going. That's never happened in my classroom for sure. So, would you believe she wrote another sequel? I don't know what the sequel to a sequel is called. I'll have to look that up. But this one is called R.T. Margaret and the Rats of NIMH. And they saw it. I showed it to them. And they said, will you please buy it? I said, no, I can't buy a whole other set of books. So they said, well, will you buy one that we can share? And I said, yes, I will do that. And when it came, Joya said, look, it has a human on the cover. There's going to be a human. So they're predicting right there. But I asked them, would you like to do gap scenes for this one? And they said, yes, but let's only do one so that they can really focus in on it. So that is the activity called gap scenes. And as I said, both of these activities can be done with any book, really at any grade level. And I hope that it will be something that will be useful to you. I'd like to end by showing you what a group of my students did with this book. February is Library Celebration Month at our school, and one of the special activities our librarian does is she has a contest for students to dress up as book characters, and without any help from me, nothing from me, they got together and created the cast of Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH. And one of the students, Walter, hadn't even read the book yet. He's in a different reading group, and he so wanted to be a part of this. And wonderful Stanley will show you what they came up with for the different characters. You can see Jeremy, beautiful Jeremy the Crow, and Mr. Ages and the Owl, and Mrs. Frisby, and Timothy himself. And so that was, what a beautiful meaning-making activity for this book. So I hope you will give the newspaper activity and the gap scenes a try in the weeks to come. And remember that those who read, lead. And when have we needed greater leaders in our world than at this present time?